A heavy, sour scent, the unmistakable smell of a deep sickness, seemed to hang on poor Olivia Garner like a shroud. She was swaying back and forth right there at the very edge of the platform, looking like a willow in the wind. The whole world was a dirty brown blur on that dusty train platform, and her vision was swimming something awful. Everything was hazy and distorted under the harsh glare of that merciless Colorado sun. That sun just beat down on her, offering no comfort, only a searing, blinding heat. Bless her heart, she had traveled more than 1,000 long, hard miles all by her lonesome. She came all this way with the hope of marrying a man she had only known through letters. But instead of a happy new beginning, she arrived in the town of Victor with a terrible fever just tearing through her. The sickness had stolen all her energy, leaving her with barely enough strength to even keep her feet under her. It did not take but a second for a man named Adam Yates to spot her struggling. He saw her right away, a fragile figure standing out from the handful of other folks getting off that train. As the other passengers bustled away, she was the only one who looked lost and terribly unwell. She looked just like the woman in the letters he had read so many times. The description was a perfect match, right down to her beautiful auburn hair that caught the light, and those green eyes he had dreamed about, though now they were clouded with pain, and her skin was a deathly pale color. The desperate way she was holding on to a rough wooden post just to stay upright sent a jolt of worry through him. Seeing her so weak and needing support like that truly alarmed him, making his heart pound in his chest. This was not at all the picture he had painted in his mind of meeting his future bride. "Miss Garner," he said, his voice full of a concern he did not expect to feel so strongly. He called out her name and started moving fast, rushing toward her as he saw what was about to happen. He watched in alarm as her knees started to give out from under her, buckling from the strain. Through the thick, confusing fog of her fever, Olivia thought she heard someone call her name. She had just enough time to see a tall, strong-looking figure coming her way through the haze. And then, just like that, her legs completely gave way, with nothing left to hold her up. The very last thing she remembered feeling was a pair of steady, strong arms wrapping around her. They caught her just before the world went completely black, and she fell into unconsciousness. "It is all right, I have got you now," he said, his voice a low and steady comfort. Adam whispered the words close to her ear, a gentle promise he hoped she could somehow feel. But she was already gone, lost to the fever, so he carefully gathered her into his arms. He held her small, delicate frame securely against his broad chest, a sudden fierce protectiveness washing over him. He was truly surprised at how little she weighed in his arms. She felt as light as a feather. Her skin was scorching hot, a dangerous fever he could feel right through the thin, simple fabric of her well-worn traveling dress. The good folks of Victor could not help but stop and stare as this unfolded before them. Their tall, familiar rancher, Adam Yates, was carrying an unconscious woman right through town. He strode with purpose down the dusty main street, his boots kicking up little clouds of dirt. That is when Mrs. Patterson, the kind wife of the general store owner, saw the commotion. She hurried right out of the store and onto the wooden boardwalk, her apron still tied around her waist. "Adam Yates, my goodness, is that your mail-order bride you have been expecting?" she called out. Her voice was filled with alarm, and her eyes were wide with genuine neighborly concern. Adam just nodded grimly, his jaw tight. "It is her, Mrs. Patterson. She is in a bad way. She is burning up with a terrible fever. I am taking her straight out to my ranch to look after her." "To your ranch?" she questioned, her brow furrowed. "Son, that poor girl needs a doctor and not that lonely cabin of yours. That place is just too isolated for someone this sick," Mrs. Patterson insisted, wringing her hands. Adam let out a heavy sigh. "I know, ma'am, but Doc Sanders left for Denver just yesterday. He will not be back in town for at least a week, and I cannot just leave her be." Adam carefully adjusted Olivia's limp form in his strong arms, trying not to jostle her. "I reckon I can manage," he said, his voice low but steady. "I have nursed sick cattle through far worse than this. The minute he returns, you can bet I will send a rider to fetch him immediately." "Hold on there, Adam, at least take my wagon," a voice called out. It was Mr. Johnson from the hardware store. He did not wait for an answer. He was already moving toward the hitching post, untying his horse. It was a simple act of kindness, but it meant the world to Adam in that moment. "I would be mighty grateful, Mr. Johnson," Adam said with heartfelt thanks, carefully placing Olivia into the back of the sturdy wagon. He was ever so gentle with her. He took off his own dusty jacket, folded it into a makeshift pillow, and gently cushioned her head. Then he covered her small frame with a thick blanket, despite the warmth of the spring day. He could see her struggling for each breath, which came in shallow, worried gasps. Her face was flushed a deep, angry red, a clear sign of the fever that gripped her so tightly. The long 6-mile journey out to his ranch suddenly seemed like it would stretch on for an eternity. Every single bump and rut in the road made him worry, hoping he could get her there safely. Adam could not stop himself from glancing back at the frail woman who now sat beside him. She had made that long and dusty journey all the way from a city called Boston. He had agreed to marry her, sight unseen, to be his wife here in the Wild West. It was supposed to be a practical arrangement, a partnership of necessity. He needed a wife to help build a life on his growing ranch. And in her letters, she had practically begged for a chance to come out here. She was looking for any escape from a life of endless, thankless work, hunched over a needle and thread as a seamstress in a stuffy little room. Neither one of them had been looking for some grand, sweeping romance. But Lord have mercy, neither of them had expected this terrible turn of events either. Just then the rocking Y Ranch finally came into view as they slowly made their way over the crest of a sun-drenched hill. There it was, a sturdy 2-story log cabin, complete with a wide, welcoming porch, nestled right up against the awesome, beautiful backdrop of the Rocky Mountains. It was a sight to behold. Adam had poured 5 long, hard years of his life into building that place from the ground up. He started with nothing but his own 2 hands, and a powerful sense of pride swelled in his chest. That feeling was there even with the worry gnawing at him. He just prayed. He truly hoped that poor Olivia would live long enough to see it in all its glory. With a gentleness that surprised even himself, Adam carried her slight frame inside, going straight to the little bedroom he had so carefully prepared just for her much-anticipated arrival. He had even gone to the trouble of hanging fresh gingham curtains and buying a colorful new quilt, which he had picked out himself from the mercantile and general store in town. They were just small, simple touches, his humble attempt to make a complete stranger feel welcome in her new home. But now, looking down at her, those little comforts seemed so painfully inadequate, so foolish. He felt a pang of helplessness as he carefully laid her feverish, trembling body on the clean, crisp cotton sheets. He stood there for a moment, his mind racing, and hesitated only briefly before he reached down to gently loosen the tight collar of her traveling dress and carefully remove her worn-out, dusty shoes. Her feet looked so tired from the long journey. A part of him knew that proper etiquette demanded he keep a respectful distance from a woman he barely knew. But her desperate condition required immediate and tender care, and that was far more important now. Without another thought, Adam dampened a clean cloth with cool, fresh water from the wash basin and gently placed the cool, damp cloth right there on her burning forehead, praying it would bring her some small comfort. Leaning in close, he spoke in a low, worried whisper. "Miss Garner, ma'am, can you hear my voice at all?" he asked as softly as he could. For just a brief moment, her eyelids trembled like a butterfly's wings, and a soft, faint sound escaped her lips. It was nothing more than a jumble of words, nothing a man could rightly make sense of, and then just as quick, she was gone again. She drifted right back into that deep, still silence where his voice and his touch could not reach her. Adam kept a steady watch by her bedside all through that long, dark night, with only the flicker of an oil lamp for company. He was constantly changing out that cool compress on her head, dipping it in fresh well water the second it grew warm from her fever. And whenever she'd stir, even just a little, he'd carefully try to coax a few precious drops of water between her cracked, dry lips. When the first pale light of dawn started to creep into the room, a heavy feeling settled deep in his gut. He knew he could not do this alone. He was going to need some real help, and he was going to need it fast. So as soon as the sun was properly up, he saddled his horse and rode out with a powerful sense of urgency, heading for the next homestead over. He was making for the little homestead that belonged to Martha Wilson, a place known for its well-tended garden and good, sensible folk. Martha was a kind-hearted widow woman who had seen more than her share of hardship and had a reputation for being a fine, experienced nurse. She was raising her teenage son all by herself out there. Adam got straight to the point. She's got a terrible fever, he said, his voice strained with worry. I reckon it might be from that long, hard journey she made to get here. Or she am mighty afraid it could be something else entirely. Something a whole lot worse, Adam finished explaining, his voice full of concern, right after Martha had taken a good long look at poor Olivia. Martha had gently checked Olivia's pulse and laid a knowing hand on her brow, her expression growing more serious by the minute. You could see the worry plain as day etched on her kind, weathered face, every line telling a story of deep and immediate concern. Well now, she said, her voice steady and calm, this could be that influenza that is going around. Or it might be something nastier like typhoid fever. It is mighty hard to say for sure right now. The first thing we need to do is get some willow bark tea brewing to fight this thing. That will help bring that fire down, and we have to get plenty of water into her system, even if it is one spoonful at a time. Bless her heart, the poor thing is as dry as a West Texas creek bed in August. Under Martha's steady command, a sense of order returned to the worried household. Following her expert guidance, Adam and Martha became a dedicated team, working side by side without taking a moment's rest. They toiled together clear on through the long, hot Texas day, doing every single thing they could think of for the sick woman in the bed. Adam headed straight down to the creek bed, his boots sinking in the soft mud, to gather up strips of fresh, potent willow bark. Meanwhile, back in the small cabin's kitchen, Martha was busy preparing nourishing, warm broths, the kind that could put the life back into a body. She also spent a good deal of time gently bathing Olivia's skin, which was burning hot to the touch, using cloths soaked in cool water. She used that cool water to offer what little relief she could manage. But eventually the sun started to dip low in the sky, and Martha knew she had to get back. She had her own livestock to feed and a whole list of chores to see to back at her own place, so she prepared to leave Adam for the night. But before she walked out the door, she gave Adam a list of very clear and detailed instructions. Now you listen here, she said. You are in charge tonight. That is a good heart you have in there, Adam Yates, Martha, the doctor's wife, said, pulling her shawl tight. She paused in the doorway, her face filled with a deep respect for the man before her. Most men in these parts, bless their hearts, would have just dropped that poor girl off at the hotel in Victor. Or they would have put her on the very next train and sent her right back where she came from. No questions asked. Adam simply shook his head as she left, the idea of abandoning Olivia feeling all wrong. She came clear across the country, he mumbled. All this way, just to marry a stranger like me. The least I can do is make sure she gets back on her feet. It felt like his solemn duty to see her well. Once the house grew quiet, he was left alone with the sleeping woman. He settled into his worn chair and carefully unfolded her bundle of letters by the warm, flickering lamplight. Every loop and line of her perfect handwriting told him he was reading the words of a truly intelligent woman. And underneath that smart mind, he could sense a powerful determination, a spirit that refused to be broken. She had written with such passion about her dreams of starting over, of building a completely new life out here, a life in the wide-open West, far away from the gray, smoky skies and the loud, clattering factories of Boston. He could almost smell the soot on the page as she described her old life. But about her own kin, she was surprisingly quiet. She only mentioned her family once, just to say that her dear mother and father had passed on. It had happened many years ago, and their passing had left her completely and totally alone in this world. She had been forced to rely on nobody but herself to survive, and he found himself admiring her grit. After 2 long nights of worry, on the morning of the 3rd day, the heat finally left her body. The fever was gone. Exhausted from his long vigil, Adam had finally fallen into a light sleep, slumped in the chair he had pulled up to her bedside. It was a faint, raspy voice that cut through his sleep and made him sit bolt upright in his chair. "Where am I?" she whispered. Her green eyes, which had been glassy and dull, were now looking right at him. They were clear for the first time since she arrived, but he could see a fog of confusion still swirling within them. She stared right at his face, trying to place him. "Easy now," he said gently, not wanting to scare her. "You're on my place, the Rocking Y Ranch. We are about 6 miles west of the town of Victor." Adam kept his voice low and steady, a calming presence in the quiet room. "And I'm..." I am Adam Yates. I reckon you came a long way to marry me, Miss Olivia. For just a second, a light of understanding flickered in her eyes as the pieces started to come together in her mind. Mr. Yates, she said, her voice still shaky and weak. I remember your kind letters. With a sudden surge of effort, she tried to sit up, but her strength failed her completely, and she fell back. She sank back against the pillows with a frustrated sigh. Oh, Mr. Yates, Adam, I am so dreadfully sorry. Believe me, she whispered, a faint blush on her cheeks. This is not the first impression I had planned on making. He moved with a quiet gentleness and poured her a cup of cool well water. Now hold on there, he said softly. There is absolutely no need for you to apologize. You have been through quite an ordeal, laid up with a bad fever. The most important thing in the world right now, he continued, is that you are finally on the mend. Just focus on getting your strength back. Olivia took the tin cup with a slightly trembling hand and sipped the water. It felt like a blessing on her parched throat. How long have I been here? She whispered. He answered gently, You have been resting for 3 full days. Yes, ma'am, today is Thursday. The news hit her like a splash of cold water, and her eyes flew wide open. A wave of alarm washed over her as the reality set in. 3 whole days? She repeated, the words barely a whisper. Her mind raced, trying to piece everything together. And does that mean you have been taking care of me all this time? The question hung in the air between them. A deep blush spread across her face, a warmth that had nothing to do with her illness. The impropriety of the situation hit her full force. Oh my goodness, she stammered. That is hardly proper, sir. Adam gave a small, understanding smile, trying to put her at ease. Now do not you worry about that. Mrs. Welton from the next homestead has been over. She has been a tremendous help, a real godsend, Adam assured her, his voice steady and calm. She is a good woman and a good neighbor. He met her worried gaze directly, a hint of a reassuring twinkle in his eye. And I want you to know, I have been a perfect gentleman the entire time. You have my solemn promise on that. Despite her embarrassment, a small, genuine smile finally touched her lips. The smile softened her features. I believe you, Adam, she said softly. It is just that this is not at all how I pictured our first meeting. I had a whole different picture in my mind, she confessed, and I am certain a sick bride was not what you were expecting, either. Adam let out a soft, kind chuckle. Well, life is full of surprises. The good news is we have plenty of time ahead of us. We can get properly acquainted just as soon as you are all healed up and feeling strong again. His gentle words were a comfort to her soul, and over the next few days, Olivia's strength slowly began to return to her. The deep, bone-weary exhaustion started to fade, replaced by a flicker of her old energy with each new sunrise. Soon she was able to sit up against the pillows without feeling dizzy, which felt like a major victory. From there, she progressed to taking short, careful walks from the bed to the window and back again. Each time, she had to lean heavily on Adam's strong, steady arm for support, and he never once made her feel like a burden. He brought her simple but nourishing meals of broth and toast on a wooden tray. To pass the long hours, he would sit and read to her. His voice was calm and soothing as he read articles from the weekly paper or chapters from the few adventure novels he owned. It was a small collection of books, but she cherished the gesture more than he knew. Exactly 1 week after she first arrived, she felt a new resolve. Olivia woke up that morning and insisted that she was through being an invalid. She was determined to make her way downstairs. Though he seemed hesitant, Adam saw the fire in her eyes and carefully helped her down the wooden stairs to the kitchen table. He positioned her chair in the best spot in the house, where she could finally look out the window and see her new home. She gazed out at the vast Texas ranch, a beautiful expanse of rolling prairie spreading out before them under a big blue sky. She winded out at the wide open pastures, stretching as far as the eye could see and dotted with his herd of cattle. Closer to the house, she noticed a small, tidy vegetable garden, and way off in the hazy distance, she could just make out the dark silhouette of mountains against the big sky. Oh, it's just so beautiful, she said, her voice soft with wonder. Adam, your letters, they painted a nice picture, but they didn't do this place a bit of justice, not one bit. Adam stood beside her, just watching the pure awe on her face. He was seeing his own home, the land he'd poured his sweat into, through her brand new eyes. Well, it's still a mite rough around the edges, I suppose. he admitted with a slow Texas drawl. I've been more focused on the herd of cattle than I have been on making the house all fancy and comfortable. Oh no, it feels like a real home already, Olivia assured him, her smile genuine. I am so eager to do my part and contribute, just as soon as I'm fully recovered from my journey. Now you hold on, there ain't no rush at all, Adam said, his tone gentle but firm. Our arrangement was always meant to be a partnership, a life together. But I surely never expected you to come all this way just to work yourself to pure exhaustion. Olivia looked at him then, really studied him, taking in his plain, honest face and the deep well of kindness she saw shining in his clear blue eyes. He was a good man, she could feel it. He wasn't handsome, not in the way those fancy gentlemen back in the city were. His nose looked like it had been broken at least once, and it sat a little crooked on his face. His sun-weathered skin, tanned and lined from the harsh Texas sun, spoke of countless years spent working hard right out in the open. But there was a solidness to him, a steadiness that she found incredibly comforting and appealing. It was something she desperately needed. Adam, I should tell you something, she began, her voice trembling just a little. The truth is, I wasn't entirely forthcoming with you in my letters. There are things I left unsaid. I did not just leave Boston simply for a brand new start in a new place. I was running, you see, running from someone, a powerful factory owner who was a man who would not take no for an answer. An answer, and he was not about to let it go. He became more insistent. Adam's jaw tightened into a hard line. Tell me straight, Olivia, did he hurt you? He asked, his voice low and serious. She hesitated for a long moment, the painful memories flashing in her mind. Finally, Olivia admitted, I managed to leave before he could do more than just terrify me. I got away before things got worse. He put the fear of God in me, Adam. I was so afraid that he would just keep on, coming after me if I stayed in Boston. I felt like I had no other choice but to run. Well, let me tell you something. He will never find you way out here, Adam promised, his voice solid as an old oak tree. And I swear if he ever did, he would live to regret it. The quiet, steely conviction in his voice was something she had not heard in a very long time. It brought a sudden and unexpected rush of tears to Olivia's eyes, blurring her vision. It had been so long since anyone had even offered to protect her, to stand up for her, not since her own dear father had passed away. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I just pray that I have not brought all of my past troubles right here to your front door. Adam let out a short, humorless laugh. Ma'am, trouble finds its own way out to these parts, with or without a formal invitation, Adam replied, the corner of his mouth turning up in a wry smile. But the big difference now is we are going to face it side by side together. You see, that is what real partners are supposed to do for one another. As the days turned into a week and Olivia's health steadily improved, she began to feel the need to contribute. She started to take on small household tasks around the cabin. She found a sewing kit and began mending the rips in Adam's work shirts. She even helped prepare some simple, hearty meals and took it upon herself to bring some order to his cluttered pantry. Adam would come in from the fields in protest, insisting that she should still be in bed to rest. You need to take it easy for a while longer, he would say. But Olivia firmly insisted that keeping herself busy and making herself useful was the very best medicine for her body and her soul. Besides all that, she told him with a determined glint in her eye, I absolutely must earn my keep around here. We made a deal, Adam. We had an agreement. That old agreement can wait, Adam argued back gently. Your health and well-being come first and foremost. Their friendly little discussion was suddenly brought to a halt by the unmistakable sound of an approaching buggy carrying Dr. Miller. Well, it was a welcome sight to see Dr. Sanders finally ride up, his horse kicking up dust after the long journey back from Denver. He had been gone for what felt like an eternity, and he was already making his rounds, a man dedicated to his duty. He had a long list of folks to check on, but he made Adam's place a priority. The good doctor went into the room and gave Olivia a very careful and complete examination. Adam stood just on the other side of the door, listening to the quiet murmurs, his heart pounding a nervous rhythm against his ribs. Finally, what felt like a lifetime later, the old wooden door creaked open and Dr. Sanders stepped out. He had a calm, kind look on his face that immediately put Adam's worried mind at ease. He told Adam, "Son, she is on the mend. It looks like she caught a terrible case of the influenza. From what I can tell, it was made a whole lot worse by her long trip out here." The doctor explained that the sheer exhaustion from all that travel had just worn her body down completely. "I have left some medicinal powders for you to give her, just in case any of that fever tries to creep back in. But I believe the worst of it has passed. She has turned a corner, thanks to good care." He looked Adam straight in the eye and said, "You did a fine job nursing her through this, Adam. A mighty fine job." A wave of pure relief washed over Adam, so strong it nearly buckled his knees. He let out a breath he did not realize he was holding. "Don't give me the credit, Doc," Adam said quickly. "You should be thanking Mrs. Wilson. She's the one who knew exactly what needed to be done." The doctor smiled warmly. "Then I will be sure to thank you both. Not every young woman who travels out here as a mail-order bride is fortunate enough to land in such a good and caring home. She is a lucky one." Then the doctor leaned in a little closer, lowering his voice to a confidential whisper. "You know that fella Jenkins? The one who has that plot over by the creek? Well, his intended bride finally arrived last week. But the poor girl had a bit of a persistent cough from the journey, nothing more than a tickle in her throat, too. And that man, Jenkins, he put her right back on the next stagecoach heading east. He told folks he was not about to accept, and I quote, damaged goods. Can you imagine the coldness of that?" Adam's friendly face turned hard as stone. "Doctor," he said, his voice low and steady, "Miss Garner is not a piece of freight. She is not goods of any kind, damaged or otherwise. She is a human being. And she was a person who was sick and deserved to be cared for with kindness and respect." Dr. Sanders' smile returned, this time full of admiration. He clapped a firm, proud hand on Adam's shoulder. "And that right there, son," the doctor said with a nod, "is exactly why she is going to do just fine right here with you. Now you just keep a close watch on her for another week, maybe a little longer. And do not let her do any strenuous work just yet. Her body needs time to heal up proper." After the doctor's buggy was just a small dust cloud in the distance, Adam quietly went back into the house and found Olivia sitting up in the chair by the window. Staring out the window, her face a canvas of quiet contemplation. "The doctor had some good news," he said. "You are going to make a full and complete recovery." Adam relayed the message to her, his voice filled with a relief he could not hide. Olivia turned and gave a slow nod. "Yes, he also told me something else, about how very fortunate I am. It seems that some men in these parts would have simply walked away from a bride who had fallen so ill." Adam shifted his weight from one foot to the other, feeling the heat rise in his neck under her steady gaze. "Well, I am not some men," he said plainly. She smiled softly, a real smile this time. "No," she agreed in a near whisper. "No, Adam, you most certainly are not." And as the warm Texas spring gave way to the long, hot days of summer, Olivia felt her true strength returning, filling her up completely, better than before. With her health back, she was determined to take over all of the duties of the household, insisting that it was her place, freeing Adam to focus all his energy on the hard work the ranch demanded. Soon enough, they settled into a life with a comfortable and predictable routine. Adam was always rising long before the sun came up, heading out in the cool darkness to tend to the cattle. Olivia found her own rhythm in preparing hearty meals to fuel him and maintaining their simple little house, making it feel like a real home for the first time. It was in the quiet evenings, after the day's work was done, that they would sit on the wide front porch and just talk, slowly learning about each other's pasts, sharing their life stories one small piece at a time. She came to learn that Adam had made his way west when he was only 17 years old, working tough jobs as a common ranch hand for years, saving every dime he could until he had finally saved enough to stake a claim on his very own piece of land. He told her how he had lost both of his parents to a terrible cholera outbreak when he was just a boy, and that he had been sent to be raised by a stern uncle who taught him everything there was to know about ranching, but taught him precious little about kindness or the importance of a gentle touch. All that hardship forged a powerful dream deep inside of him. His life's goal was to build the Rocking Y into a legacy, one of the biggest and most successful cattle ranches in all of Texas. He was mighty proud of his ranching operations out there in the high country of Colorado. As he got to know her, he discovered that Olivia had a surprising secret she had taught. She had taught herself how to read, piecing together words from old, discarded newspapers she found long before she ever saw the inside of a proper school. She only got to go to school every now and then, in between working all sorts of little jobs just to help her family make ends meet and keep food on the table. After her dear mother and father passed on, she had to face the world all alone. She ended up working long hours in a loud, dusty textile factory, carefully saving every last penny she earned, but all while putting up with some truly awful and harsh working conditions that would have broken most folks, but not her. Her quiet, unwavering determination really impressed him. It was a strength he admired. It was just as impressive as how smart and capable she was becoming around his ranch. A full 2 months had passed since the day she arrived on his doorstep, and in all that time they still had not spoken a single word about getting married. You see, the original agreement they made through the letters was for them to marry right away within a week of her stepping off the train, but of course her sudden and serious illness had thrown a big wrench into all of those plans. And since she got well, neither one of them had found the courage to bring the subject up. That quiet tension finally came to a head one afternoon when they decided to go to the big Independence Day festival, the 4th of July celebration everyone talked about. The whole big to-do was being held down in the nearby town of Victor. This was a special day for Olivia, her first real trip out into the world since. She had finally gotten her strength back, and she made sure to wear her very best outfit, a simple but pretty blue cotton dress that looked just wonderful. The color of it perfectly complemented her fiery auburn hair, which she had spent a good long while arranging so carefully. Adam just froze and stared when she walked down the stairs into the main room. He was completely taken aback. "You look absolutely beautiful," he said, the honest words just tumbling out of him. They came straight from his heart before his mind could even think to stop them. A sweet pink blush rose on Olivia's cheeks. "Why, thank you, Adam. It feels so good to dress properly again after weeks of recovery." In town, they were immediately surrounded by curious neighbors, eager to meet the mail-order bride who had arrived so dramatically. Olivia handled the attention graciously, though Adam noticed her tension when Mrs. Henderson asked pointedly when the wedding would take place. "We haven't set a date yet," Adam answered, placing a protective hand on Olivia's back. Miss Garner needed time to recover. "Recovered now, isn't she?" pressed Mrs. Henderson. "People are talking. You know, a single woman living with an unmarried man, even under contract, isn't proper." Olivia's smile remained fixed, but Adam felt her stiffen beneath his hand. Later, as they watched the fireworks bloom over the mountains, Adam broached the subject. "I'm sorry about Mrs. Henderson. She has a talent for discomfort." "She wasn't wrong," Olivia replied quietly. "Our arrangement is unusual. Perhaps we should discuss our plans." Adam turned to face her, the colored lights of the fireworks playing across her features. "I won't hold you to our agreement if you've changed your mind. You've seen the reality of ranch life. It's hard work in isolation. Now, if you want to return to Boston or try your luck elsewhere, I'll provide the fare." Olivia looked surprised. "Do you want me to leave?" "No," Adam said quickly. "That's not what I meant. I want you to be sure. Marriage should be a choice, not an obligation." "I've had time to observe you, Adam Yates," Olivia said carefully. "You're a man of your word. You work hard. You treated me with kindness when I was ill, and respect as I recovered. Those are good foundations." She paused. "But what about you? You agreed to marry a healthy, capable woman who could help run your ranch. Instead, you got someone who arrived too sick to stand." Adam reached for her hand, surprising both of them with a gesture. "I got exactly who I was meant to have." The fireworks reached their finale, bursting in spectacular cascades of light, but neither noticed. Their eyes were locked on each other, a different kind of understanding passing between them. They were married the following Sunday by the traveling preacher who she made the long drive to visit Victor every single month, without fail. Their wedding ceremony was a simple affair, nothing too fancy, held right there in the little country church. The pews were filled with just a handful of kind neighbors, the folks who had watched their story unfold. Those good people were the only witnesses they needed to start their new life together. Olivia looked beautiful in her favorite blue sundress, the color of a clear Texas sky. She had woven little wildflowers she'd picked herself right into her hair, a touch of natural grace. Adam, bless his heart, had gone down to the silversmith in Creek to have a special ring made just for her. It was a simple, elegant band of pure silver, carefully etched by a master's hand. The etching showed the jagged peaks of the mountains, the very same ones they could see from their own front porch. It was a symbol of their home, a promise of a future fisher they would build right there, together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, their wedding night began, filling the small house with a quiet nervousness. A thick sense of anticipation hung in the air, a feeling both of them shared but neither dared to speak of. Now Adam had thoughtfully moved all his things into the small second bedroom home while Olivia was recovering. He wanted to give her all the space and peace she needed to get her strength back. But now on this night, they stood a little awkwardly in the master bedroom, a new chapter beginning. The room felt charged with the unspoken truth of their new marriage, of their new closeness. The weight of this new intimacy was a tangible thing, hanging in the quiet space between them. Olivia broke the silence first, her voice barely a whisper as she looked at her hands. Adam, I have never... Her voice trailed off before she could finish, and a deep blush crept up her neck. She felt a little embarrassed, but then Adam said something that surprised her completely. Neither have I. He admitted it so plainly, his gaze steady and honest. Not in a way that truly counts, anyway. He paused for a moment, searching for the right words to explain what he meant. Not with someone He hesitated again, the confession catching in his throat, making this moment all the more real. Olivia prompted him, her own voice soft as a summer breeze. Someone you what, Adam? He finally looked her straight in the eye and finished his thought. Someone I care for, he said, stepping a little closer. Because I do care for you, Olivia, he confessed, his voice full of a sincerity that touched her soul. A whole lot more than I ever expected to. And in that moment, she knew he was speaking the honest truth. I care for you too. She whispered back, her heart swelling with a feeling she hadn't known she was missing. She lifted her face up to his. Their first kiss was not rushed or demanding, but was as tentative and sweet as a new blossom. It was a gentle, careful exploration that slowly deepened as their shared feelings began to bloom. Her confidence, once so fragile, was finally starting to put down roots and grow strong. Adam gently cupped her face in his work-roughened hands, his touch full of a tenderness she'd never known. He held her so carefully as if she were the most delicate and precious thing in the whole world. Olivia wrapped her arms around his strong shoulders, holding on tight to find her balance. She steadied herself against the dizzying, wonderful wave of brand new feelings. These were sensations of hope and belonging that warmed her all the way to her soul. That night, beneath a blanket of stars, they began to truly learn the stories of each other's hearts. Their journey started slowly, with quiet questions whispered into the darkness of the room. Hesitant, gentle touches asked more than words ever could, slowly building trust and certainty. And that quiet understanding blossomed into a deep and undeniable passion between them. Later, when the world was still and quiet, Olivia lay peacefully in the circle of Adam's arms. She rested her head on his sturdy chest, just listening to the steady, reassuring rhythm. His heartbeat was the most comforting sound she had ever heard. I never, ever imagined this, she whispered. She confessed it softly, her voice barely breaking the silence. You see, when I first answered your advertisement, I was just hoping for a safe place to land, for a real partnership. I never once allowed myself to think that I might actually find something like this. Her words trailed off because she wasn't quite ready to put a name on the beautiful. She couldn't name the tender feeling that was blooming in the space between them. Adam, however, understood. He just continued to gently stroke her hair. Me neither, he admitted quietly. But I am so very grateful for it, whatever it turns out to be. The long, hot days of summer. They slowly melted into the cool, crisp air of autumn, and with the changing season, their bond. It grew stronger and deeper with every day of hard work they shared side by side. Their connection was cemented in the quiet, peaceful evenings spent just being together. With a world of patience, Adam began to teach Olivia how to ride a horse, a skill she'd never had. And to his genuine surprise, she proved to be a natural, picking it up quicker than he could believe. It was not long before she was riding right alongside him, helping with the shorter rounds. Together they would check the fences on the sprawling property. At the same time she took the long neglected vegetable garden and poured her heart and soul into it, bringing it back to life. It became a beautiful, productive plot of land that yielded more than enough food to see them through the winter. They had worked so hard to preserve everything they could for the long winter ahead. Their first real test, however, came unexpectedly in the middle of October, when a freak blizzard came roaring down from the north, striking much earlier than anyone could have possibly predicted for that time of year. As fate would have it, Adam was caught way out checking on the cattle in the far pasture. That is exactly when the terrible storm hit, a solid wall of white that reduced visibility down to almost nothing in just a matter of a few short minutes. Back home, Olivia waited. She was filled with a growing anxiety as the long, lonely hours passed with absolutely no sign of her husband. When the sun finally gave up and a deep darkness fell over the land, Adam still had not returned, and Olivia knew she had to make a difficult decision. She could not just sit there any longer, helpless against the storm. She bundled her small frame in his heavy, warm coat and took a deep breath. Then, with a steady hand, she lit the large kerosene lantern they always kept ready for emergencies. She battled against the howling wind and the biting snow, making her way step by difficult step out to the old wooden barn, where she carefully hung the bright, glowing lantern up in the highest window of the hayloft, creating a single powerful beacon of hope that she prayed would be visible from a very long distance. After she had done all she could, she just had to wait, praying with all her heart that the warm light would be enough to guide him safely back home to her. Meanwhile, poor Adam had lost all his sense of direction, completely turned around in the blinding whiteout conditions of the blizzard. His faithful horse, a strong animal named Thunder, plodded on with a dogged determination through the snow that was getting deeper with every step. But Adam knew in his heart that they were just wandering aimlessly in circles. A deep, penetrating cold was starting to seep through his thick clothes, and a terrible fear, not for his own safety, but for the thought of leaving his sweet Olivia all alone in the world, gnawed at his very soul. "Just a little further now, boy," he encouraged his horse, his own voice sounding weak. He patted Thunder's neck, though he had absolutely no idea which way he should lead them through the endless white. And then, through the swirling snow, he saw a faint glow in the far-off distance, a tiny flicker of light that was barely visible through the storm, that blinding white curtain of snow. Just when he was about to give up, a tiny spark of hope surged through his frozen veins as he saw it. He squinted, and bless his heart, he recognized the warm, familiar glow of the lantern hanging in their own barn. With a new fire in his spirit, Adam pulled on the reins, turning old Thunder toward that beacon of safety. The tired horse seemed to understand, gathering some last bit of strength from deep down as they pushed on together. They struggled through the last few yards toward home. Inside the cabin, Olivia's head snapped up when she heard the unmistakable groan of the big barn door opening. She threw her shawl on and rushed out into the blizzard to find her husband, Adam, looking more like a ghost than a man, half frozen and stumbling, while he gently led his poor, exhausted horse into the shelter of the barn. "Oh, my lord, you're alive," she gasped, the words coming out in a puff of white air, and she just threw her arms around his neck, not caring one bit about his stiff, snow-covered coat. "That little light, it saved us both," Adam managed to say, his voice barely a whisper, his words shaking as his teeth chattered something fierce from the bone-deep cold. "No, darling, you saved us," Olivia corrected him softly, helping him lean on her as they shuffled to the warmth of the little house, where she had been praying and keeping the hearth fire roaring like a dragon, a bright promise against the dark, howling storm outside. She worked quickly, her fingers fumbling a bit as she peeled away his frozen, stiff clothes, layer by painful layer, and then she wrapped his shivering body in the thickest, warmest wool blankets they owned, setting him in a chair right before the crackling hearth. She knelt down, gently but firmly rubbing the life and feeling back into his icy hands and feet, her own tears mixing with the melting snow. slowly when a little bit of pink color finally returned to his pale face. She hurried to the kitchen and brought him a steaming mug of hot coffee, laced with a generous pour of strong whiskey to chase the chill from his bones. I swear I thought I'd lost you out there, she finally admitted, her voice breaking on the last word as she looked at his tired face. I just don't think my heart could bear losing you, Adam. With what little strength he had, Adam reached out and pulled her into his arms for a proper hug. Now listen here, you won't be losing me that easily, my sweet Olivia Yates. You have to know I have far too many good reasons to fight my way back home to you, every single time. As the warmth finally seeped back into his body, Adam just sat there by the fire, feeling weak but grateful, and he watched his precious wife as she moved around their small, cozy cabin, her movements full of grace and purpose. She was fixing to make him a hot meal to fill his belly, and every few minutes she'd stop and check on him constantly, her eyes full of a love so deep it could melt any storm. And right then, a powerful realization struck him like a bolt of lightning. And in that quiet moment, everything became clear as a blue Texas sky. It was a feeling that hit him like a gentle summer rain, washing away all doubt. He looked right at her, his eyes full of a truth he could no longer hold back. Olivia, I love you, he said, his voice soft but steady as a heartbeat. The words came out so easy, like they'd been sitting on his heart forever, waiting. It felt as natural as breathing the cool night air, a fact of his world, as if he'd practiced them in his dreams 1,000 times before. Olivia stopped dead in her tracks, every part of her going completely still. The heavy ceramic bowl of beef stew she was holding suddenly felt weightless in her hands. Her fingers went numb, and the precious meal nearly clattered to the wooden floor. With trembling hands, she carefully placed the bowl on the little side table. She made sure it was steady before her knees found the rug beside his bed. She knelt down, bringing her face close to his, needing to see his eyes. Her voice was barely a whisper, full of hope and a little bit of disbelief. Adam, please, would you say that again for me? A small, sure smile touched his lips. I love you, he repeated, even stronger this time. He reached out a hand, searching for hers in the dim light. He found her fingers and laced them with his own, a warm and solid comfort. I reckon I started falling for you right then and there, he confessed softly. The very moment I lifted you off that dusty old train platform. He squeezed her hand, remembering the feel of her in his arms, so fragile yet so strong. Big, fat tears started rolling down Olivia's cheeks, warm and silent. She didn't even bother to wipe them away, as a joyful sob escaped her. Oh, Adam, I love you too. The words tumbled out, full of pure relief. I've been so terribly afraid to say it, even to myself. She confessed, her voice thick with all the emotion she had been holding inside. I thought it was too soon, or that maybe, just maybe, you didn't feel the same way. But Adam wouldn't let her finish her sentence full of doubts. He leaned forward and silenced her worries with a gentle, loving kiss. It was a kiss that promised safety, a shared future, and a home. When January rolled around, bringing with it a biting cold, Olivia started feeling poorly again. But this was a whole different kind of ailment. It wasn't the same weakness as before. This time, it was a new and mysterious set of symptoms that had them both worried and wondering. It was old Dr. Sanders who finally put a name to what they had both started to quietly reckon in their hearts. He confirmed their deepest hope. She was expecting a precious new life, a child due to arrive in the late summer. That powerful news washed over their little homestead, bringing a tidal wave of both pure joy and a deep, chilling fear. They both knew that bringing a child into the world out here on the wild frontier was a risky business, a gamble with life itself. The difficult journey was fraught with danger, and the haunting memories of Olivia's last terrible sickness lingered in the air between them. Those memories made Adam feel a fierce need to protect her, a feeling so strong it was like a fire in his chest. He watched her every move, making sure she was safe and sound, his heart aching with a love that was mixed with worry. Darling, maybe we ought to think about moving into town for a spell, he whispered, his voice full of concern. Just for those last few months, to be closer to help, he suggested as they lay tucked in their warm bed one cold night. The moon cast a pale light across the room, and his calloused hand rested ever so gently where their future lay. It was a protective gesture, a silent promise to guard her in the tiny life she carried, even from his own fears. Olivia turned to him, her eyes soft but resolute. And just leave our ranch, everything we've built, all alone? That's just impossible, Adam. You know it is, she answered, her voice firm but not unkind. She took his hand in hers, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Besides, strong women have babies on their own homesteads every single day. We have good neighbors with Mrs. Wilson just a ride away, and she knows more about birthing than most doctors. And with the doctor in town and our trusted Victor here to help you, I know you two will manage just fine. Adam listened, but the knot of worry in his stomach did not completely disappear. He was not entirely convinced. Still, he looked into her eyes and recognized that unshakable determination, the same grit that had gotten them this far. He saw the set of her jaw and knew there was no changing her mind. This was their home, and this was where their child would be born. All right, he sighed, giving in, but at the very least, let me hire on some extra help for the big spring roundup. That way I won't have to be so far out on the range. I can stay closer to the house, closer to you. To this sensible compromise, Olivia readily agreed, her heart swelling with love for this caring, protective man. She squeezed his hand again, understanding that his worry came from a place of deep and abiding love. Our baby's going to be strong and healthy, Adam. I can feel it, she whispered into the quiet of the night. And we're both going to be just fine, you'll see. As the hard winter finally began to thaw, melting into a hopeful spring. Olivia's own body began to change with the seasons, her once slender frame softening and rounding with new life. Her figure began to bloom as their beloved child grew safely and strong right there inside of her. Adam found himself just watching her, his heart filled with a kind of awe he had never known before. Adam could not stop looking at her, his heart filled with a kind of wonder he had never felt before. This tiny new life was proof of their love, a new root they were planting together on this land. When the bluebonnets began to cover the fields, it was time for the spring roundup. That busy season always brought extra hands to the ranch, and this year they hired 2 young cowboys. They were boys, really, full of energy and eager to prove they were men, and with them came an older fella named Hank. Hank was a man whose face was a roadmap of Texas weather, with decades of real-world experience. With a solid crew like that, Adam could finally tackle all the hard work that spring demanded. But the best part was he could get it all done while staying close to the main house. He made certain he was never more than a good holler away from Olivia, just in case. That peace of mind, knowing he was nearby, was worth more than gold to him. Now Olivia, she was a strong woman and insisted on keeping up with her normal daily chores. She was determined not to be treated like a delicate flower, and she kept going for as long as she could. She was sensible, though, and finally let the men help with the heavier jobs, like hauling buckets of water from the well. But she found her greatest joy in the quiet, hopeful moments she spent preparing for the baby. With her own loving hands, she was turning the small second bedroom into a warm and welcoming nursery. She would sit for hours in her rocking chair, sewing the tiniest little shirts from soft calico fabric. She had ordered the special material all the way from the general store in town. And during those peaceful evenings, with the crickets chirping a lullaby outside, she would knit a beautiful soft blanket. Every single loop of yarn was filled with all her hopes and dreams for their child. Then, one hot afternoon in late April, a lone rider appeared on the horizon, a dark shape against the bright sky. As he got closer, they saw he was a well-dressed stranger, looking completely out of place in his fancy city clothes. He rode right up to the porch and introduced himself in a sharp, clipped voice. He said his name was Tobias Williams, a businessman all the way from a faraway place called Boston. Olivia was out in her vegetable garden at the time, her hands in the rich Texas soil, tending her plants. Adam was mending a nearby fence post, and he saw the man, but more importantly, he saw his wife's reaction. He watched her face go as pale as a sheet, the healthy color draining away, as if she had seen a ghost from her past. "Mrs. Yates," Williams said, and his voice was smooth but had an edge as sharp as a knife, his smile never reaching his cold eyes. "Or perhaps," he continued, letting the cruel words hang in the heavy air, "I should be calling you Miss Garner." His nasty smile widened just a little bit. "You did leave us in quite a rush, after all." Before another word could be spoken, Adam moved, positioning himself like a shield between this stranger and his precious Olivia. In a heartbeat, Adam moved, placing his own solid frame like a shield between the city man and his wife. He planted his feet firm in the Texas dirt and asked, "Just what kind of business do you have here, fella?" The man, Mr. Williams, barely glanced at him, his gaze sharp and calculating as he sized Adam up. His eyes were as cold and hard as river stones in the dead of winter, holding no kindness at all. "The young lady you're protecting, Miss Garner, used to work for me back in Boston," Williams said, his voice slick. "She saw fit to leave her position quite suddenly, without so much as a proper goodbye or a moment's notice. Worse than that, she helped herself to a generous amount of wages I had paid her in advance. That's a complete and utter lie," Olivia's voice rang out, clear as a bell, though Adam could feel her trembling behind him. She stood her ground, her chin held high, showing a strength that defied the fear he knew she felt. "You never paid me a single dime I didn't earn with my own two hands, and you know it. What you were really offering," she continued, her voice gaining power, "was not a wage for my work. It was an indecent proposal for other duties. Duties I refused then and would refuse 1,000 times over." A dark storm cloud passed over Adam's face as her words sank in, his jaw tightening into a knot. All the pieces of Olivia's past clicked into place, and the picture it painted was an ugly one indeed. So this was him. This was the powerful man from the factory that she had run so far to escape from. The kind of man who believed his money could buy anything, and who simply refused to take no for an answer. "My wife," Adam said, his voice low and steady as the plains, "doesn't owe you a single thing. So I strongly suggest you get back in your fancy carriage and leave our property before you regret it." Williams's lips twisted into a cruel, unpleasant smile that never came close to reaching his eyes. "Your wife?" he sneered, drawing the word out. "Well now, isn't that a convenient little arrangement for her? Tell me, Cowboy, did she happen to mention the promises she made to me before she disappeared? Did she tell you we were practically engaged to be married right before she decided to flee? She certainly had no complaints when she was accepting my expensive gifts and my constant attention. It seems she only developed these sudden high and mighty morals when it was time to hold up her end of the bargain. I never accepted anything from you that I didn't throw right back in your face," Olivia shot back. The raw anger in her voice finally burned away the last of her fear, leaving only pure fire. "I told you over and over again to leave me be, but you just wouldn't listen to a word I said. And that is why you threatened my job, isn't it? You tried to corner me with no way out." Hearing that, something inside Adam snapped. His hand moved slowly, almost like it had a mind of its own. It drifted instinctively toward the stock of the old hunting rifle that was always leaning right there by the door. Adam's whole body went tight, and he looked like he was fixing to launch himself right off that porch and against the porch post. But Olivia, bless her heart, saw the storm in his eyes and placed a gentle but very firm restraining hand on his powerful arm. "He is not worth the trouble, my love," she murmured, her voice a soft plea just for him. "He ain't worth it." Williams, of course, noticed the small gesture, and a cold, nasty laugh escaped his lips. "Well, I will be," he sneered, looking Adam up and down. "You have certainly trained this simple cowboy of yours, and trained him well, Olivia. But do not for one second think I have traveled all this miserable way across the country just to leave here empty-handed. I figure $200 should be enough to compensate me for the considerable inconvenience and embarrassment that you have caused me. So what will it be?" Adam's jaw tightened. "You will get absolutely nothing from us. You hear me?" Adam replied, his voice low and dangerous, so onerous. "Unless, of course, you are willing to accept a face full of hot lead if you do not get on your horse and ride out here right this very minute." The fancy businessman's smug expression finally melted away, replaced by a cold, hard glare. "Perhaps our local sheriff would be mighty interested to hear a little tale about how a certain woman from back east, a woman who was under contract to marry me, not only broke her promise, but also stole my money, and then fled out here to the Wild West like a common thief." "Well now, that is one story," Adam said calmly. but I reckon he would be far more interested in hearing the real story about how a wealthy Boston factory owner, with too much time on his hands, decided to travel hundreds upon hundreds of miles just to come and harass a respectable and very much married woman, Adam countered, stepping slightly in front of Olivia. You see, our Sheriff Bailey, well, he takes a mighty dim view of slick city men who come out here and try to threaten good, honest women, Mr. Williams. It is just not something we tolerate, and he is particularly protective of women who are carrying their precious children. As Adam spoke those last words, William's sharp gaze dropped down from Olivia's face to her middle, where the slight, gentle curve of her belly was just visible beneath the fabric of her simple apron. For a moment, a strange and unreadable emotion flickered in his cold eyes. Maybe it was bitter disappointment, or perhaps it was the sudden, sharp, and undeniable recognition that whatever power and control he once thought he had over her was now well and truly broken for good. You always were a stubborn woman, Olivia, he said at last, his voice flat and empty. Keep your dusty ranch and your new life, a miserable life out here in this godforsaken wilderness. Back in Boston, there are plenty of women who are much more accommodating, real women. With a sneer, he yanked his horse's reins and turned to ride away. He spurred his horse hard, not even bothering to look back at the mess he'd made. He left nothing but a cloud of dust and a heavy, awful tension hanging in the air. The second he was gone, all the strength seemed to drain right out of Olivia, and she sagged against Adam. She waited until Williams was just a tiny speck on the horizon. "Oh, Adam, I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling with leftover fear and new shame. "I swear I never in a million years thought he would follow me all the way out here." Adam just wrapped his arms around her, holding her steady and close. "Now listen here. You don't have a single thing to apologize for. You understand me? But if that fella ever comes back, or if anyone else ever makes you feel threatened, you tell me. I need to know these things, Olivia. We're in this together now, and we face our problems together. You remember that, all right?" That very night, sitting by the warm glow of the fireplace, Olivia finally told Adam the full and ugly story of Tobias Williams and his terrible behavior. She explained his months of persistent, unwanted attention and how it had finally pushed her to make the desperate decision to answer Adam's newspaper advertisement for a wife. The breaking point, she confessed, was the day Williams had trapped her in the dark, empty stairwell at the factory, where no one could hear her if she screamed. Her escape from the city had to be quick and quiet, forcing her to leave almost everything she owned behind. All her keepsakes and memories were abandoned as she raced to the station. She got on that westbound train with nothing more than a single small trunk that held only the barest of essentials. "I know I should have told you everything right from the very beginning," she concluded, her voice thick with regret. "But I was just so afraid you might not understand. I was terrified you would think poorly of me, or worse, believe that I was just bringing a world of trouble right here to your front door." Adam listened to every word, his expression serious. Then he gently cupped her tear-streaked face in his big, warm hands. "Olivia," he said, his voice steady and true, "there is absolutely nothing that could make me think less of you. And as for trouble, well, it surely did come knocking on our door. That is for certain. But we stood shoulder to shoulder and faced it down together. You can bet your last dollar that fella won't be showing his face around here ever again." And you know what? Adam had been right all along. That scoundrel Tobias Williams was never seen again anywhere near the lands of the Rocking Y Ranch. Though, as word travels fast in these parts, they later heard a little story. It seems he had tried to go crying and plead his sorry case with our good Sheriff Bailey, only to find out the sheriff is a man who does not suffer fools gladly. He was firmly advised to get himself out of the territory and not let the sun set on him there. And with that, a peaceful summer rolled in. The rains that season brought up fields of lush, green grass for all the cattle to graze on. And as the ranch prospered, they were busy with their own happy preparations for the baby's arrival. Adam, bless his heart, worked day and night to expand their little house, adding on a proper bathroom that had a brand new pump, one that brought fresh, cool water straight from the well right into the house. Now that was a modern luxury Olivia had not ever expected to have. but she appreciated it more than words could ever say. As her belly grew and it became harder to get around, dear Mrs. Wilson started visiting, almost at every day, bringing her wisdom and kind advice that calmed Olivia's nerves. She brought a peaceful reassurance with her, along with all sorts of practical handmade gifts. She had made herself for the little one on the way, the whole community of hardworking ranching families around them, who had at first been mighty curious about the mail order. Bride from back east had now fully and warmly accepted Olivier's as one of their very own. The other ranch wives would bring over jars of their sweetest peach preserves and beautiful hand-stitched quilts, while all their husbands came by to help. Adam built a fine little cradle, crafting it carefully from strong, seasoned pine wood that would last a lifetime. Then, in the simmering heat of early August, during a particularly blistering hot spell, Olivia's long-awaited labor finally began. Adam, he jumped into action. He sent one of his fastest ranch hands racing off to town, kicking up a cloud of dust to fetch Dr. Sanders as fast as his horse could gallop, while the ever-calm Mrs. Wilson took complete charge of the birthing room with a steady hand. All poor Adam could do was pace the front porch, praying for his wife and child. Adam paced the worn wooden floors, listening anxiously as Olivia's cries of pain echoed from the other room. The sounds traveled right through the thin walls of their small house, making him feel completely and utterly helpless. He was a man who could fix anything, but he could not do a single thing against her pain, and it was eating him alive. After 16 of the longest and most grueling hours of his life, the bedroom door finally opened and Dr. Sanders appeared. The old doctor emerged from the bedroom, and the look on his face made Adam's heart stop in his chest. He was weary, bone-tired even, but a slow, pleased smile spread across his face. "Well, congratulations, son. Adam, I am happy to tell you that you have a healthy son, and just as important, your wife is going to be fine. She is terribly tired, of course, but she is well." A powerful wave of relief washed over Adam. It felt like the first cool summer rain after a long, hard drought, settling all the dust and fear in his soul. He tiptoed into the now quiet bedroom, his heart full, and that is where he found his Olivia. She was propped up against a small mountain of pillows, and her face, while pale and tired, seemed to glow. She looked completely exhausted, bless her heart, but she was also radiant as she cradled a tiny bundle in her arms. It was a precious little bundle, all wrapped up in the soft blue blanket she had spent so many nights working on. He remembered her knitting it by the fire, her hands moving with such love. "Come and meet your son," she said. Her voice was just a whisper as Adam approached the bed, moving so cautiously as if he were on sacred ground. "His name is Samuel Yates," she told him, her eyes bright with happy tears. "I wanted to name him after my father." With hands that shook just a little, Adam gently took the newborn from her, marveling at the tiny life he held. He studied the impossibly tiny features, the little button nose and perfect little ears that somehow looked so familiar. He saw a perfect combination of his own strong jaw and Olivia's soft chin. Right then, the baby's eyes fluttered open. They opened for just a second, a pair of unfocused, cloudy blue eyes, the color of a hazy Texas morning. Adam reckoned they would probably darken to a deep brown one day, a perfect match to his very own. "He's perfect, Olivia," Adam murmured, his voice thick with an emotion so big it nearly choked him. He was completely overcome with a feeling he had never known before. "No, you're perfect," Olivia whispered back. She smiled that tired but beautiful smile that always made his heart skip a beat. "Hardly perfect, my love," Adam chuckled softly, shaking his head. "I am just doing my best for my new family." Adam sat down ever so carefully on the edge of the bed beside her, trying not to disturb her. He settled in, still holding their son, feeling like the richest man in the whole world. "Can you even remember it? Do you remember the day you first arrived here? You were so sick you were too weak to even stand up. You couldn't even stand on the train platform by yourself." She looked at him, her eyes distant. "Vaguely," Olivia admitted, her voice soft as a feather. "Most of that time is just a long, fevered blur to me now. Until the next thing I knew, my eyes were fluttering open right here in this very bed. I remember it like it was yesterday. I picked you right up and carried you to Johnson's wagon myself, and from that bumpy wagon, I carried you straight into this house," Adam said, his voice soft with the memory. He looked at her, his eyes full of warmth. "You weighed almost nothing at all, darling. I was so scared, just absolutely terrified that I was going to lose you before I ever got the chance to truly know the woman you were. Instead, I was blessed to live long enough to fall in love with you," Olivia finished for him, her voice barely a whisper. "And I'll tell you something. I never once dreamed, while I was carrying you across the threshold of this home, that someday down the road I would be standing here, holding our very own child in my arms." You could hear the emotion catching in Adam's throat. His strong voice broke just a little. "Thank you for taking a leap of faith and answering my lonely advertisement. My dear Olivia Garner Yates, you changed my whole world. Thank you for being so tough and stubborn, for having the pure grit to not let that awful fever get the better of you. You fought with everything you had. And I suppose you're also thankful you decided not to send away your damaged goods," she teased him gently, a little smile playing on her lips. Her words were a playful nod to that silly story Dr. Sanders had told them. Adam just smiled and leaned down to press a long, tender kiss to her forehead. "Listen to me. You were never goods to be bought or sold, not for a single second. You were always a precious gift, a true blessing that I knew deep down I hadn't done a thing to earn." In the weeks that came and went, little Samuel grew stronger and healthier every single day. His strong, hearty cries and the sharp, growing awareness in his bright little eyes brought a whole new kind of joy that filled every nook and cranny of the old ranch house. That house felt more like a real home than ever before. Adam began to rearrange his work so he could spend more precious hours near the house, and you could often see him wearing the baby, nestled close to his chest in a soft cloth sling that the kind Mrs. Wilson had, carefully sewn together just for them, all while he finished up his daily chores around the homestead. It was a sight to behold, that rugged rancher with his son. As the days grew shorter, autumn arrived in full force, painting the mountainsides in brilliant shades of gold and deep crimson. The season brought with it crisp, cool nights that found the new family of three bundled up, warm and close together. The little family would gather around the warm glow of the stone hearth nearly every evening. Adam's deep, steady voice would fill the room as he read interesting stories aloud from the local newspaper. And all the while, Olivia would sit peacefully in her rocking chair, gently nursing their precious baby boy, Samuel. For Adam, these simple, quiet moments became the thing he looked forward to most in his day. They were his most treasured times, the beautiful result of a life he was building. It was a kind of happiness he never even knew he could dream of, a fulfillment he'd never imagined. Not until the day Olivia stepped off that train and walked right into his life, changing everything for the better. When the bluebonnets began to blanket the fields the following spring, the ranch was blessed with a wave of new life. And with all the new calves came a whole new level of prosperity for the growing Yates family. The price for cattle was higher than it had been in years, and their hard work was finally paying off. Adam was smart enough to bring on a few more good ranch hands to help with the workload. This allowed him to keep expanding the herd, making sure their future was secure and stable. But more importantly, it gave him that precious time he craved to spend with his beloved family. While Adam tended to the cattle, Olivia started planting her own roots in the rich Texas soil, creating an orchard of apple trees. She carefully planted each sapling, already imagining the sweet harvest they would enjoy in the years to come. She pictured a whole mess of future children, their own children, laughing and playing among the trees. And it seemed those dreams were coming true sooner than they thought, right around Samuel's very first birthday. It was on that special day that Olivia realized she was expecting their family's next little miracle. Yes, she was going to have their second child, bringing even more joy to their happy home. This time around, the pregnancy was a whole lot easier for her, a welcome change from the first one. It was as if her body now understood the beautiful, demanding work of creating a new life. Even old Dr. Sanders, who was a man who'd seen it all, took notice of the difference. He kept a careful watch over her health as a good doctor does, but he couldn't help but be impressed. He had to agree with Olivia's own feeling that she was in absolutely wonderful health this time. He told her, "Well, you are a far cry from that frail young woman I first met. I hardly recognize you from the pale, sickly lady who stepped off that train not so long ago." He made the kind remark with a warm smile during one of her regular checkups in town. He tipped his hat and said, "This ranch life sure does agree with you, Mrs. Yates. It surely does." But Olivia just smiled a secret, knowing smile, and replied softly, "Oh, it is not just the ranch, doctor." Her loving gaze drifted past him, out the window where she watched Adam playing with their son. You could see little Samuel out in the yard, already looking like a true rancher in the making. And then another blessing arrived for them, a sweet baby daughter they named Elizabeth. She was born in the heart of February, during a gentle snowfall that was as soft as a whisper. That snow covered the whole ranch in a perfect, quiet blanket of the purest white. Now, unlike her big brother's rough and worrisome entry into the world, Elizabeth's arrival was different. This little girl came into their lives quickly, calmly, and as peaceful as a Sunday morning. She made hardly any fuss at all, and that easygoing spirit was just a sign of her sweet nature. It was a pattern that would follow her all through her happy, sun-filled childhood on the ranch. And as the children grew bigger and stronger each year, the Rocking Y Ranch grew right alongside them. It was all because of Adam's sharp mind and careful management, always thinking 2 steps ahead. And you can't forget Olivia's steady, practical support, which turned their hard work into a real legacy. Together, they transformed their humble patch of land into one of the most respected operations in the area. Before long, their ranch was known as one of the most successful and well-run in the entire county. To make sure they were always on solid ground, they even added a large flock of sheep to diversify their earnings. That extra income helped them build a much larger barn and put a little more money aside for the future. And eventually, they saved up enough to build a proper, comfortable bunkhouse for their ranch hands. They had good, loyal men working for them now, and they wanted a decent place for them to rest their heads. These weren't just seasonal helpers. These men were there year-round, becoming part of the ranch family. When their 5th wedding anniversary came along, Adam decided it was time for a grand gesture. He completely surprised Olivia by telling her to pack her bags for a special trip to the big city of Denver. It was the first real vacation they had taken together, just the two of them since she first set foot in Colorado. This was their chance to be just a husband and wife again, away from the constant demands of the ranch. Of course, this wonderful trip wouldn't have been possible without their kind-hearted neighbor, Mrs. Wilson. That dear woman graciously stayed with Samuel and Elizabeth, spoiling them rotten while their folks were away. This allowed Adam and Olivia to spend 3 luxurious, worry-free days in the city. They checked into the magnificent Windsor Hotel, went to the theater to see a real stage play, and felt like royalty. They were dining in restaurants fancier and more elegant than they could have ever imagined. It was a whole different world from the simple, quiet life they knew back home in Victor. On their final evening in the city, as they were getting ready to head back to the ranch, Adam had one more surprise. Just as they were preparing to return home, Adam turned to Olivia with a sparkle in his eye and presented her with a small velvet box. Inside was a small, dark blue velvet box, the kind that feels soft as a whisper against your skin. He opened it to reveal a beautiful gold locket gleaming in the lamplight. "Go on, darling, open it," he urged gently. She took it in her hands, her fingers tracing the delicate, swirling engravings of wildflowers right there on its polished, golden surface. It felt warm and solid, like a promise held in her palm. With a soft click, the locket opened, and her breath caught in her throat. Inside was a perfect, tiny painting of their beloved Rocking Y Ranch house, complete with the big front porch, sitting on one side of the locket, and then on the other side, a miniature family portrait so detailed you could almost hear them all laughing together. It was all of them, Adam, looking strong and steady, Olivia herself with a newfound peace in her eyes, and their sweet children, Samuel and Elizabeth. The image had been perfectly captured by that fancy photographer they had seen during their last big trip into the city. "Oh, Adam, it is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen," Olivia whispered, her voice thick with emotion, as warm tears started to gather in the corners of her gentle eyes. I just wanted to make sure you could always carry our home and our family right here with you, Adam explained softly, his thumb brushing away a single tear. Though Lord knows I hope you will never have to be far away from it, not for a single day. Olivia snapped the locket shut and clutched it tightly over her heart, the metal warm against her dress. Adam, do you ever find yourself wondering what might have happened if things had gone differently? You know, if I had not gotten so terribly sick right after I first arrived here at the ranch, what if we had gone and gotten married right away, just like we had originally planned? Adam looked out at the twilight settling over the fields, considering her question with real seriousness. Well, he said slowly, his voice thoughtful, I reckon we might have taken a whole lot longer to truly get to know the heart of each other. That fever of yours, as bad as it was, well, it forced us to learn how to take care of one another in a real way, long before we even thought about how to love one another. I suppose you could call it a strange kind of blessing in disguise. Olivia leaned her head on his shoulder, musing on his words. I suppose you are right, though I must say I certainly would not recommend a raging fever as the best way to start a courtship or get a good man's attention. There have to be better ways, I am sure. Adam let out a warm, hearty laugh that echoed in the quiet evening air, pulling her close into his strong arms. My darling Olivia, I would have nursed you through 100 fevers, one after the other, if that was the price I had to pay to have this wonderful life that we have built together here. But let us both pray it never comes to that again. That will not be necessary, my love, Olivia whispered, her voice full of warmth as she rose up on the very tips of her toes to give her tall husband a sweet and lingering kiss. A whole 10 years had passed, a full decade since Olivia first stepped off that train into the dusty town of Victor, a stranger in a strange land. Now the Rocking Y Ranch was alive with music and laughter, hosting a grand celebration to honor that very special day, their anniversary. Friends, family, and neighbors from all over the county gathered on their sprawling lawn to share plates piled high with barbecue and to tell old stories, all of them still marveling at the incredible journey of the once lonely, hard-working bachelor rancher and the determined city woman who answered his ad, his mail-order bride. Together, against all odds, they had created not just a home, but a thriving, prosperous ranch and a beautiful, loving family that was the heart of the whole community. Their oldest son, Samuel, now a sturdy 9-year-old boy, had his father's calm and quiet strength, and you could see in his eyes that he shared Adam's deep love for the Texas soil. Elizabeth, their bright 8-year-old daughter, was blessed with her mother's fierce determination and a mind as sharp as a tack. And then there was 5-year-old James, their youngest boy, who was the perfect, wild combination of both his wonderful parents, blessed with a mischievous little grin and a playful spirit that was 100% his own unique creation. As the Texas twilight began to settle, painting the big sky with strokes of purple and orange, Adam found Olivia standing all by herself on the wide front porch. She was leaning against a post, just watching the last of their happy guests drive away down the long lane, while their children's joyful shouts echoed in the yard as they ran around chasing the season's first glowing fireflies. Happy, my love? He asked in a low voice, gently slipping a familiar arm around her waist and pulling her close. Olivia relaxed into his embrace, leaning her head against his strong shoulder, fitting perfectly into that special place right beside him, a place that felt more like home than anywhere else in the world, just as she had from the very beginning. Completely and utterly happy, she breathed, though I admit I was just remembering how very differently this beautiful life of ours could have turned out, how easily it could have all slipped away. Adam looked down at her, his brow furrowed. How so, darling? What were you thinking? She paused, remembering that terrifying journey. What if I hadn't taken sick on that long and lonely train? What if you hadn't been standing right there on the platform to catch a completely different sort of man, maybe a hard man with a cold heart? She shook her head, a small shiver running through her despite the warm Texas night. Lord, there were so many chances for things to go terribly, terribly wrong on that long journey. Adam felt her tremble and tightened his hold on her, pulling her even closer. Or perhaps, my darling Olivia, it was meant to be exactly as it happened, every single step of the way. He truly believed it. You were meant to arrive here too sick and weak to even stand on your own 2 feet, and I was meant to be the one to carry you across that threshold and bring you home. Olivia turned slowly in his strong arms, her hand coming up to gently trace the familiar lines that a decade of bright sun and easy smiles had etched like a map of their happy life around his kind eyes. She smiled back at him, her heart full to bursting. And I reckon you were meant to nurse me back to health with such patience, so I could finally be strong enough to love you properly. A low chuckle rumbled in his chest. Well, if that was the bargain, I think I got the better end of that deal by a long shot, Adam murmured. Murmur, his voice soft as he lowered his head to kiss her, his lips meeting hers with the very same breathtaking tenderness he had shown her that very first night, when they were strangers bound together as husband and wife. Out in the sprawling yard, the joyful sound of their children's laughter floated on the breeze, mingling with the steady, peaceful chirping of the crickets and the distant, gentle lowing of their cattle settling in for the night. It was the perfect soundtrack of the beautiful, sturdy life they had built together, a life that rose from an arrangement that began with nothing more than hopeful letters and grew through the trials of illness into a love as deep and wide as the Texas sky. As the first diamond bright stars emerged above the dark silhouette of the mountains, Adam and Olivia Yates stood together, wrapped in each other's arms, on the wide welcoming porch of the home they had made from scratch. Their incredible journey from two lonely strangers to beloved, inseparable partners was now complete. But their story, well, their story was truly just beginning. Their love just kept on growing, getting deeper and stronger with each passing season. That little mail-order bride, the one who had first shown up on his doorstep, was so terribly sick and weak that she could not even stand on her own 2 feet. But she found a whole new kind of strength in the steady, gentle arms of the cowboy who scooped her up and carried her into his home. And in the process of nursing her, bringing the color back to her cheeks, he found that his own life was changing too. His lonely heart, which had been closed off for so many years, finally started to heal. You see, what had started out as just a practical arrangement, a simple deal between two strangers, had unexpectedly blossomed into the deepest and truest love either of them could have ever possibly imagined. It was a love that was tougher and real, a love that would be their anchor and sustain them through absolutely everything. All the tough challenges and the sweet joys that life on the frontier was sure to throw their way. And that incredible love story would echo down through all the many generations of Yates family ranchers who would one day proudly call the Rocking Y Ranch their beloved home.